Hello, and welcome to Justified Jewel Podcast. I am your host, Joanne Cox, and it is so great to be in front of you again. This is Brian and I coming on with a series of different political topics, and we want you to continue to follow us all the way through up until it's time for voting. This is the purpose and subject of these particular ones. Today, we're talking healthcare. Everyone needs it. It's just like breathing. I'd like to say again, welcome, Brian Winters.
Thanks
Brian?
for, thanks for having me back, Joanne. And yeah, we're going to keep doing these because we want people to have hope that there's a better way for the United States to organize, that we can solve some of the problems as a country that Congress has kind of ignored for years or even decades, that we can come together and demand solutions. We can get solutions if we work together. So we're talking about what those solutions might be, and healthcare is a problem, as you said. Have you ever, Joanne, have you ever had like you needed some health care and you either you put it off for some reason or other?
Yes, yes. I mean, you want to find out, you call them up and you want to find out if it's covered. You want to find out how much is it going to cost. And then what I'm going through is on the back burner because I've got to ask all those questions. And I just want to know, Brian, you know, why can't I just say I have something going on? Let me go to the doctor and not think about anything else. Just I just want this taken care of. Why can't I do
Well, you could if we fix the way that we did healthcare in this country, right? Other
that?
countries managed to do it, and somehow we have not managed to organize in a way that make sure that that covers everybody all the time for healthcare. And so Bernie Sanders, as you might know, has promoted Medicare for all for a number of years, and so
Mhm.
folded into the Populist Act, that big piece of legislation that I've written this year, is a version of Medicare for all, so that people could, in fact, just go to the doctor and just say, "Here's my problem," and not have to worry about how much it costs. Instead, they can focus on what do I need? What does the doctor say is best for me?
And the reason behind that is because we get into that thing of wanting to actually have a doctor or a hospital or whatever. They start seeing dollar signs and everybody is trying to make a profit. And I think somehow we forgot about serving the people and what is the purpose of health care.
Well, I think it goes back to the preamble to the Constitution that we've talked about a couple times. And one of those duties in the preamble is to promote the general welfare. Welfare includes health, making sure people are healthy. So
Yes.
the Constitution says Congress is supposed to provide for the general welfare. And so we can do that by making sure that everyone has access to health care, universal health care with Medicare for all. Yeah.
Now, now, and hold that train of thought because I don't want you to lose that. But the first thing I'm starting to think about now is healthcare versus if I'm employed, if I'm not employed, is it tied to my job? Or what about if I'm an entrepreneur? You know, all of those things just will segregate me into where do I fit in with my healthcare?
Absolutely, and you're not alone. The Bureau does studies, and they find that 1 in 6 people who get health care from their employer, they stay in a job that they don't want because they're afraid of losing their health care. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not freedom when our choices, when the options that we're being given trap us places we don't want to be. And so when we have universal health care, you will be able to have meaningful choice. You'll be able to change jobs without having to worry about losing access to healthcare. During the pandemic, Joanne, a few years ago, remember, 5 million people lost their jobs and they lost access to their healthcare through no fault of their own.
Mm-hmm.
No other country put millions of its people through this. The United States was unique, and we can
Yes.
do better.
Mm-hmm.
We can do better. You make a good point about entrepreneurs. And when I was married, I was a general contractor, and my ex-wife was the one who brought home the health insurance. And
Mm-hmm.
because she was able to provide health insurance for the family, I was able to be an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And that you see those sorts of partnerships a lots of times where you have to structure your choices around who can where can we get our insurance from? And the answer
Yeah.
should be You're an American. We're going to promote the general welfare. We're going to make sure that you have access to health care. We can do that.
And in other areas, I know that when people retire, they can say, well, I can now pay into that insurance. So if I had, insurance, justified dual insurance, then I didn't want to name a company. So if you have justified dual health insurance, you are now retiring, but now it's up to you. You can keep it, but you will continue to pay, but it will be a much larger fee. And most people now that they're retired, they can't afford that fee. And so that another dilemma. It's always something. And when you change over from one insurance to another insurance, then we have something with the age thing that's coming up. What research have you done when it comes to people that are aging out of an insurance? So there's a cap. And now they are saying, oh, you might die very soon. So we need to find out what illnesses you could possibly have. Come on. And I bring that to you because I'm there right now. So do you know anything about that? Because I'm going to tell you my
Tell
experiences.
me your experience, because I got to tell you that's not my area of expertise, and I'm not there yet. So,
Yes, yes. And so, to have health insurance, and we're not talking life insurance now, but to have this health insurance, and you've seen these crazy commercials on TV, about, health and life insurance. Everybody wants to have the continuous health insurance. So in my case, my husband was a federal employee, continuing his health insurance, which covers me. I am an entrepreneur, as most people might gather by now. So, with this, it continuously goes up until it pushes you that you no longer want to pay that price for that. You have to pick and choose where you want and how you want to spend your money. So, when we selected that we would no longer keep our federal health insurance, then we decided to find another one. Somehow or the other, we both have the same, but they treat my husband differently than they treat me. It
hmm.
is just like he's this post federal person, but then I just get kicked out. And it's just like, guess what? She's over a certain age. So they literally said, you have to have this complete physical. I say, I already do that because I have a wellness doctor. No, you need our doctors. That sounds fishy to me. And I already have a doctor and I've already had a plan. Brian, they sent someone to my house
Oh no.
and they said, this lady is going to. I said, how can I get a complete physical at home? And guess what? She had her tools so that I could have blood drawn
Hmm.
and that I had my vital signs done. And it's like, we'll get back with you later in 2 weeks. Brian, did you know about anything that crazy? And guess what? My husband has the same policy insurance, you know, and he didn't have to have that. Now, this is probably a unique situation, but I just want people to know that when it comes to health, there are so many loopholes. There are so many things that we go in and out of that people just don't even know about. And you have to understand that when you transfer in insurance, you have to make sure that you don't go see anyone in between that gap, because if it overlaps, that also will mean that the present insurance that you had, once it stops, and if it stopped in June and you went to the doctor in July, but yet your other insurance had not kicked in, you have a card, but it is not active. So now you might wind up with $1,000 bill because you went to see your doctor. How is that for some information for today on healthcare?
You drive home the point that healthcare is complicated when in fact it doesn't have to be. It can
Mm-hmm.
be simple. And
Mm-hmm.
so under the Medicare for All proposal in the Populist Act, there would be no deductibles. There would be a cap on prescription drugs, and then there would be premiums. Now remember, under the Populist Act, everyone gets unconditional basic income. Everyone gets UBI,
Mm-hmm.
starting at $20,000 a year, and 1.5% of that annual amount would be your monthly premium. And so you'd get a bunch of money, and then you pay some of it back to cover your health care, and then it could be simple. you talked about the federal insurance, and right now the federal government covers healthcare for about 40% of the United States. And so you should be getting economies of scale. You should be able to provide good deals on things like prescription drugs. And in fact, we're not. We are, we allow the drug companies to overcharge the United States far too often.
And
And
what
so we
about
can,
Medicare?
so Medicare is actually very efficient, right? Uh,
Hmm.
Medi Medicare has a administrative rate of just like I think it's 1.5%.
Hmm.
And almost all the money that they bring in goes right back out to give people health care. Unlike the big insurance companies, Joanne, can we name names of big healthcare conglomerates?
Hey, I'm independent.
Yeah, but
Go ahead.
big companies like United Healthcare, right?
Mhm.
That they make these huge profits, and one of the reasons is that they control all the layers. They control, who the doctors are. They control the insurance company. They control the prescription drugs. They control the pharmacies. There's what's called vertical integration when they control all those links. And it's a problem in many industries, but it's also a big problem in healthcare. And so
Hmm.
one of the things that the Populist Act would do would be to break those up and say, look, your business, you can specialize in one of those, but you can't control the whole chain. You gotta
Hmm.
you gotta open things up to competition.
And that's what we have here in America. There's a lot of competition going on. I lived in Norway, Oslo, Norway, for 4 years, and there was no competition there. You know, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Can
Um,
I push back on the idea that we have a lot of competition here? Because it's just like four or five companies that basically run everything.
mhm.
And once you're in one of those companies, you often don't have many choices about who your pharmacy is and what doctors are in what networks and things like that. That a lot of those choices get taken away from you.
Yeah, and see the thing is with that is that it sounds like it's not a lot, but when you get ready to find out what pharmacy you're going to go to, and then they don't fall up under that umbrella or that tier, now you go to the other one, but now you have to pay maybe $10 more for that. I went to just get a regular checkup, and this was about 2 years ago. And I'm sitting in the waiting room, and the lady had her medicine out of its container, and she dropped one. And she said, "Oh no, oh no," and I've gotta get this. And I was going, "What is wrong with her?" And I'm going, "The floor is filthy."
Hmm.
And I mean, not that I see things, but being a germaphobe, I know that a floor is dirty. And she said, "This cost me $300."
Wow.
And it was just like, you know what? I don't know what her problem was. She was mobile. She seemed to be in her right mind. A lot of things can be happening internally that you need medication. But I'm thinking that that might be one of the illness that I got to go home with, because $300 for one medication, or is it one pill? Even if it's just the one container, $300 is too much for someone to have to say, "Let me pick this up off the floor because I can't afford to lose this medicine."
Yeah,
That was sad to me.
it is. And if you're familiar with the platform GoFundMe,
Yes.
about a third of the campaigns on that site are to help people try and raise money for their healthcare needs. That's and sometimes people come up short. People try and raise money for their insulin, and if they can't come up with it, people have ended up dead.
Yes.
Again, talking about the high cost of healthcare in this
Mm-hmm.
country, each year we have about 500,000 families that declare bankruptcy because their healthcare costs got out of control. Something happened and they have to go bankrupt. We can do better. The system does not have to behave this way. We can make it work for all of us with universal health care. And it's one thing to just say that, all right, we want to make sure everybody has access to a doctor, but we've got to do something about the supply of doctors. We've got to make sure that there's enough doctors for everybody. And so one of the other aspects of the Populist Act will train more doctors, make have more slots available for residencies and for for schooling, help doctors go through a 6-year program like many other countries instead of the 8 years that we currently require. So we can
And
have more doctors and we can have better health care and we can have a simpler system.
And so we can do this and we know how to do this and we want to make it known and we want to put our voices out there and lead people in a direction that we have hope and we can unite. And that's what it's going to take for us to be united. And I would like to let Brian end this particular segment with where he can be reached. You can see on the site uh, that he will actually say as well, but you can see it throughout. Is there anything else you want to end it with by letting the viewers know what will the next podcast be about?
Um, so our next one, we're going to talk about housing, which is also an area of concern for lots of people, just like healthcare.
Mhm.
And again, these are problems that we can fix, that Congress could fix, and we, the people, if we work together in the 2026 election, we can demand across all the congressional races nationwide, we can demand that Congress fix these things, that they pass the Populist Act and upgrade our social contract, that we have health care, that we address poverty, that we take care of housing, that we fix our justice system. That there are so many things that we can accomplish if we can work together. So you can learn more about what exactly that looks like, that vision for a bright and bountiful future on my website, votewithbrian.com.
Next time, bring someone with you and make sure that you have pencil and paper so that you can jot down notes and maybe even some questions that you want to bring up that you want to answer. If nothing else, but where can I find the resources to get more information on this? Where can I go to my local meeting to find out more about this? So until next time, Justified Jewel Podcast, this is where we're going to say so long until next time.